Alrighty, here we go. That looks to be working. Alrighty then. Let's tell everyone where we're at. Streaming here. Sunday morning stream. I should probably post that to the Twitters. So let's, no, come on now. What? Hardware hacking village. Oh. Please like that. Let's fix my typo. Alright. I'll switch back to my camera view. Alright, thank you for bearing with me. Let's see here. Oh, I need to make sure that I can see the YouTube comments. There we go. There's no viewers yet anyway, so that's alrighty. Well, I think I will wait around a little bit to get a few things ready. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8. Perfect. Alright. The exact amount I needed. Let's get that over here. Let's make sure we've got no notifications we need to deal with. Alrighty. Let's get our solder ready. Got nobody here. Still no viewers. Alrighty. Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna get started anyway. And anyone who wants to see, I will just tell them to scroll back. The lovely thing about YouTube, right? Save all this stuff. So, welcome to Sunday morning's public stream of CircleCityCon's Hardware Hacking Village. Virtual again this year. I do miss being there in person, and not just because it allowed me to teach soldering on my birthday, which was absolutely awesome. That was still one of my good memories right there. That was great. Someone brought me cupcakes. But I taught a whole bunch of people solder. So, good way to spend my day. We are sponsored by CyberCityCircuits.com. They are your premier US-based PCB assembly solution. So if you have projects that you need to have built, you need 50 or 5,000 of something made, they're the people to talk to. They have just moved to a new facility and set up their assembly line. They have all sorts of really cool tools for building and populating and testing PCBs. and all sorts of cool stuff. So definitely go check them out. One of our presenters today is unfortunately out sick. They have a headache. They have a migraine, in fact. So we're going to wish Mix Edna well wishes and hope that they feel better soon. And I will probably take over their spot and talk about some of the basic components later. We got plenty of time for this session. It only takes me about 10-15 minutes to do my how to solder spiel, as it were. So that's not going to be too big a problem. Let me clean up a little bit. This is all from last night's solder demo, surface mount solder demo, which we will do again today after a nice lunch break. And the wonderful class coming up later that will be hosted in the Discord, the CircleCityCon hardware hacking voice Discord, where you can do video streaming as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't support my OBS setup. It only sees my hardware cameras. It doesn't see my virtual cameras. So I'm streaming here to YouTube instead. Let's see here. Have I stalled long enough? Oh, good. We got a couple viewers. All right. So let's get into what we're actually doing today. Today we're going to learn about through-hole soldering. That is, components that go through holes and into a PCB. We are going to be making one of these. If you ordered your kit from CircleCityCon, then you will have one with the Mr. Blinky Bling logo on there. I'm using some old DerbyCon Evolution kits that we have too many leftovers of, so they make good demos. So this is what it's going to look like when it's complete. Actually, you know what? Let's switch cameras. Let's go to... There we go. Let's go to this camera. You can see a little bit better. Alright, so it is basically a little flashlight with 8 of the brightest LEDs that we could find. They're not the cheapest LEDs, but they are bright. And we're going to put this together today. Alright, so uh-oh, we have an interruption. Oh, somebody wants some attention. Oh. Oh. She likes to come say hi whenever I'm on live stream. She's like, oh, he's got the big green screen up. It's a good time to get some pittance. Show everyone how pretty I am. Oh. Aren't you just an adorable girl? Oh. No. She never gets picked up. Never, never, never. No, never. Alright, darling. You're a cat. Go entertain yourself. Alright. Where was... Oh, yes. So, soldering is not like other forms of sticking things together. It's not like tape or glue where using a lot of pressure is your friend. In fact, if you use a lot of pressure, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to cause the parts to move around. You might damage your soldering iron. You might damage the PCB. There's just a lot of bad things that can happen. Instead, we're going to want to use light pressure. So when I'm holding this, I'm usually holding this like a pencil. And I just want to lay it in place. You can see it's just kind of there in my hand. I'm not squeezing it. I'm not gripping it like this. We're not stabbing our project. We just want to lay the heat where it goes. Because soldering is not like other forms of sticking things together, and we're not using pressure. You might wonder, what is it all about? It is all about the heat. This soldering iron gets very warm, and you do not want to touch any of the metal bits up here. They will cause considerable pain. The very tip of this out here is the part that we're worried about and going to be doing most of the work. And this is where the highest heat is, and that's where we want to do our work. And this is solder. This is a rosin core solder, so it's got a little bit of flux in the center of it, and it is a lead tin alloy. I believe this is 6040. Something like that. What we're going to do is basically melt it, kind of like hot glue, but instead of having a nice little hot glue gun where it squirts out the end, we're going to be putting the heat in one place and the glue in the other, and we're going to be forming an electromechanical bond. This electromechanical bond needs to both hold the part in place and it needs to conduct electricity. So when we're making these connections, we need to think about both of these requirements. We can't just physically hold it in place, and we can't just make it conduct electricity. We need to make it do both, and do both well. In order to do that, we're going to be looking for a nice, shiny, very pretty solder ball. If it's gray, dingy, wrinkled, pointy, or otherwise misshapen, then it may not do the mechanical or the electrical side very well. And we'll take a closer look at that later. So, the first thing we're going to put on these kits are LEDs. Let me switch cameras again. Oh, you know what? I forgot to start this one. 1 second as I get this camera going. Because, of course, now it wants the full password, not just my fingerprint. There we go. Now, can we use this camera? Excellent. Oh, yeah, we got a little bit of a lag. Alright, so we're going to be putting in LEDs. And you may notice, move that where we can see a little bit better, we have a long leg and a short leg. And the reason for that is an LED is a type of diode. And diodes are like turnstiles for electricity. They only let it go one way. And they do their best to prevent electricity from going the other way. I mean, you can obviously overpower them, but that causes catastrophic damage. There's some fun comments in the CircleCityCon hardware hacking chat, and I would like to point out that my beard is not, in fact, on fire. Thank you very much. I've gotten really good at protecting this thing. It's a great shop safety device because it really forces you to think about shop safety. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. Alright. Yeah, so diodes prevent electricity from going the wrong direction, and light-emitting diodes let light go out while they're doing their job. And that is the invention that has changed, one of the inventions that's changed the world. Alright, because it has a directional component, we need to know which direction the current is going to be going through it. So we need to know the positive and the negative, also called the anode and the cathode. And on these LEDs, and on most of these LEDs, not all of them, but most, the long leg is the positive, and the short leg is the negative. And they're going to go in these little spots. Come on, camera. Oh, we're over here. Ah, I see. Let me move this over where it's a little more in view then. Alright. Yeah. Alright, so we have these spots where the LEDs are going to go. Oh. There we are. And we have a positive and a negative indicated here. We also have a round and a square pad that helps visually identify them. And then because these kits are designed for kids, there's also a long and a short line. So we just want to line up the long leg with the long line and the short leg with the short line. We want to push it all the way through. And then when we have it through, we want to fold the legs out like such. The reason we want them along here is these pads are designed for practice and good mechanical grip, and we want as much connection as possible. So if we're off this way, there's significantly less connection over here. That said, on normal pads like these, it's not going to be important which direction they go. So if you have one of these kits, now is a good time to go ahead and put all the long legs in the long slot and the short legs in the short slot and bend all the legs out. We're going to go ahead and put all of the let me switch cameras. There we go. We're going to go ahead and put all of the LEDs in at once, because what this is going to do for us is make this PCB stand up off of our table. We're going to have a nice little air gap that these LEDs as little feet are going to give us between the PCB and your work surface. And this will help prevent damage to whatever surface you're working on. These kits were designed by myself and the hat as part of Mr. Blinky Bling, specifically for beginners, with a lot of thought going into fixing a lot of the stuff that we saw going wrong while we were teaching at various events over the years. So there's a lot of thought and engineering in this. Now, for fun, I am going to bend some of my legs as shown. Let's go back to this camera so that they don't overlap. But it's not necessary. It's just something I'm doing to make this a little bit easier, a little less visually complicated. These aren't crossing over each other. They're just bent out to the side. Now then. Oh, somebody wants more pens. Oh. Meow. We'll watch a movie together later, darling. You can you can sleep on my lap for like an hour. How does that sound? Yeah. She can't sleep anywhere else, apparently. I mean, she does, but she acts like she can't. Alright, so when we're soldering, we need to think carefully about how we're applying the heat and how the heat is going to be doing work for us. One of the things we do not want to do, let's switch to the up close camera. There we go. One of the things I'm going to use a toothpick as a stand-in for the soldering iron. We don't want to use the tip of the toothpick or the tip of the soldering iron down like this, because there's not a whole lot of surface area. Sure, we're getting heat in there, but we're going to get more heat if we come in and use the side of the iron instead of the tip of the iron. Does that make sense? We also need to make sure that we touch both things that we're going to be soldering. If we just put the heat up here, the solder is going to want to stick here, and it's not going to want to stick down there. So we want to make sure that we are touching both. If we're just touching the pad, and this is especially true if this is over here, so if we just have the heat over here, then the solder is going to connect to this very well, and it may or may not connect to this. One of the things it may do is it may flow over this, but it may form a layer of oxides between it and here, and it'll form a nice mechanical bond, but we won't get an electrical connection, or won't get a good electrical connection. So it's important to think about that. Now, let's pretend that I want to solder this bottle to my hand. Let's go this way. And I bring my iron in at an angle and I put it down like this. But look, you can see, oh, there's a big black triangle in there. There's still a whole bunch of space. And as you may know, air is an excellent insulator. It's not going to conduct heat well. So what we want to do is fill that space with a little bit of liquid melted solder. And so what we're going to do is called tinning the iron. But this is the part where even people who've soldered before tend to pick up the best tip in this class, and that is there's very much a Goldilocks amount of tinning. When we're dealing with this small ball of melted solder, we need to think about the surface tension that it has. If it's too large, the surface tension is going to cause behavior we don't like. So when we put the soldering iron down, if we have a small amount of solder, it's going to wick through capillary action. It's going to pull itself down, and we're going to see it go right in there and just form a nice little thermal bridge and pump heat exactly where we want it. But if we have too much, when we put it down, we're going to see that ball just sit there, and instead of pulling itself down into the part in the pad, it's just going to pump like a toad with its throat inflated while it's calling for a mate. It's just going to sit there, and it's going to radiate heat everywhere instead of exactly where we want it, and it's going to have that layer of oxide between it and everything else, and so it's going to make soldering a lot less fun. So let's take a look at this up close. And we want close-up camera. Alright. So, one other note. Notice how dull and dingy and gray this soldering iron tip is. It's not been used for a few minutes, so it's been chemically reacting with the air because it's pumping a lot of energy out via heat, and it's now all dull and dingy and covered in that layer of those oxides we don't like. So we're going to rub it in the brass and wipe it off. If you don't have brass, you can use a wet sponge. However, you should know that a wet sponge is going to convert a lot of that water to steam, and that's going to pull heat out of the iron. Now look at that, nice and shiny. There we go. We are ready to do some work now. So let's put some tinning on there and see what that looks like. This is a good amount of tinning. This is still okay. This is too much. It's not a big difference, but I promise it has a big difference in how this works. So let's take a look. If we got too much, we're just going to wipe the excess off in that brass. And we're going to come back here. We're going to put the right amount on here again. Look at that. Now it's still dry on this side. We've got a little bit here. What happens is we put that down, and look how it's pulled itself down. See, I can pull it out a little bit, and it's pulled itself down. We've got a nice little bridge. So if we give that bridge a little bit of time to heat that up, we come in from the other side with the solder. If we put the solder over here, it's just going to glob onto the iron where it wants to be. We want to make it work to get there. So we put it over here on this side. We make it work to go around the part over to the heat where it wants to be. And then we pull that off, and look at that. It's just beautiful. And since we still have the right amount of tinning, we're just going to come back over here. Let me see if I can do it on this side so you can see. There we go. And look at that. Just beautiful. So let's do one more, and let's talk about it again. I'll go on this side. We're going to put the tinning down. You can see how the tinning has pulled itself across, and now it's down on this side already. We put the heat over. We put the solder over there. It's going to work to get to the heat. We're going to remove the solder, and we're going to leave the heat on there that extra second. The reason for that is we want to make sure that we've heated this all the way through. So let's screw a couple of these up and show you how to fix them. Let's come over here to this side. Let's wreck these. Alright, so first I'm going to put way too much solder on here. And you can see what I mean. You see how that surface tension just globs up there. And now we have this ugly connection. And then let's do another one over here where we see if I can make this ugly. You get good at doing it right, it's hard to do it wrong. Alright, there we go. So if we look at these and we compare them to these, we can see these are nice and shiny and smooth, whereas these have wrinkles and spikes, and this one's not covering the whole pad. They're not going to work as well. The way to fix these is with more heat. So this one is going to be the easiest. We're just going to put heat on here and watch what happens as the heat just flows into it. A little bit of time with the heat and presto. Notice that the extra solder has now balled onto the iron. We've got a big ball here and it's got that dingy color on it. So we're just going to wipe that away because that's not good. Now over here we're going to need to add a little bit more. So we're going to put the heat in here. We're going to see how it pulls itself together a bit. But we're going to definitely need a little bit of fresh solder on this side. And then presto. Once again we're pulling the extra solder off with the iron because solder really wants to be on the iron where it's hot. There we go. You will sometimes see people where they're soldering two wires together and they've twisted them together and then they put a big ball of solder on there and they just kind of lay that on top and then it takes forever to make a solder joint and it may or may not work. And that is because the solder is already nice and hot, happy on that hot soldering iron, and comparatively speaking those wires are much colder. So why would I want to go there? You can fix that with a little bit of flux. So if you put some flux in the wire as you twist them together or cover it, that will help. Flux is great for helping with stuff like that. But it's even better if you just do it correctly the first time. Alright, so let me check for questions. I don't see any questions on the YouTube or on the Hardware Hacking Village stuff. Feel free to ask questions anytime. I'm quite happy to do demos, answer questions, etc. This is for you all. It's not, so, y'all let me know what you want. Alright, so let's screw some more up. Let's use a dry iron and see what happens. So we got a dry iron here. We're gonna put it here, and we're just gonna push the solder up here, and wow, nothing's happening, and it's just not happening, and it's still not happening. So that's why a dry iron can be a very frustrating experience. If we just put solder straight up here, you can see how it's staying on the iron. If we hold the iron there, it'll pull down because of the surface tension. But if I do the same thing over here, let's see if I can get this where you all can see, where I just ball the solder up here. Oh, yeah, it pulled itself down anyway. It will sometimes just stay on top. Some of the error conditions are hard to actually get on purpose. Alright, so let's see if I can do Alright, so here we have some solder on here that will hold it in place mechanically, but it's not going to hold it in place. It's not going to conduct electricity. So we've got that layer of oxides in there because we were putting the heat up here and not on the pad and the part. So we want to make sure that we cover everything, the whole thing. Let's do too much. Let's do too much solder and form a bridge. So this is a bridge. Electricity is pretty lazy, so if it has the opportunity to skip doing the work of going through that LED and then coming back out, if it can go just right across here, it's going to do that. This is where a dry iron comes in really handy. So you can see we have a dry iron here. We're going to take it perpendicular to the connection, and we're going to take the fat side of the iron, not the skinny, not the tip. We're going to take here, and we're just going to put this in here and watch it melt, and then we're going to pull down through the center. You see, I've pulled a bunch of solder off, but not enough. So I'm going to clean this tip off. Then I'm going to put it back in here, do the same thing, and now we have pulled enough off, and we have a good connection. Let's do too much again on this side. Just, yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. Oh, and we got a good phase transition there. Good, good. Alright, so see this line right here? This line right here means that the phase transition from liquid to solid happened at two different points in this, and so there is actually a major line running all the way through this, and that may or may not conduct electricity well, and this is sometimes called a cold joint because it wasn't heated all the way through. So the way to fix that is just to put heat on it, but the main thing we're going to fix here is the cosmetic. This if we heat this all the way through, it's still going to be too large a ball, especially compared to, well, let's put a normal one next to it for scale. There we go. So you can see it's way too big. There's a really cool trick we can use to deal with this, and this is just if you want to make your work look a little more presentable. We're going to take the side of the iron, we're going to heat that all the way through, and then we're just going to pull along this leg like this, and voila. So now we have two normal sized, good looking solder connections, and we have this big chunk here hanging off the side, and when it comes time to trim this, we're going to grab this with our fingers, and we're going to take, it's still quite warm, we're going to take our edge cutters and we're going to cut it, and look, that whole big ball of solder is now off there, and no one will ever know it was there, right? I don't think I cut that close enough. 1 second. There we go. That's better. So when we're trimming these, we like to keep a finger on. Well, let's switch to a slightly wider view for the trimming. So when we're trimming these, we're going to hold on with. Sorry, this camera is backwards and it's tripping me up. This way. There we go. Alright, and there's that delay because it's on Wi-Fi. So we're going to hold this with our fingers so it doesn't go anywhere. We've got these cutters. Come on, show up on camera. They have a flat side and an angled side. We're going to take the flat side down towards this. We're going to come in at an angle. We don't want to cut straight down to the PCB. That would be bad. That would undo all the work we just did. So we want to cut this at the ball. Nice and close like that, so that when this comes off, there's nothing to catch on our skin or clothes. Should be nice, smooth. So we're going to go ahead and do that on all of these. And always want to hold these because they will go flying off. You don't want them to get into your beard or your eyes, as the case may be. I'm going to trim a bunch of these. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Come through here. Cut them nice and close to that ball of solder. So, alright, I still have two connections left. Two sets that I have not soldered. So let's solder them and in a slightly wider angle so you can see how this is going without it being quite so up close. So we're going to look at that. Just beautiful. just like that. Nice and easy. And we're going to trim them. You always want to throw these away as quick as you can. They are not fun to step on. Alright, so next we're going to be doing our resistor. I'm going to grab a random one off the table. Your kit will come with the correct resistor. Now the resistor does not have an orientation. It does not matter which way we put it in. We just need to make sure we bend the legs to go into those holes. They're kind of far out, but that's both a stylistic choice and helps with the kit, which we will look at here in a moment. We can put the resistor in right here so that it's lined up. There we go. And then when we flip this over, we're going to see that it's here and here. Let's go this way a little bit. There we go. So we've got our legs splayed out. Now you see this big rectangle here, that is for the battery pack. So we want that battery pack there, and we don't want to have anything underneath it, so that if the student messes it up, we can come back and fix that without having to worry about that plastic battery in the way. So these are going to be just like the other ones, but we're going to use a little less solder. We still want to have, let's do this other one up close. We still want to have, wrong way. There we go. We still want to have the right amount of tinning on the iron, and we just want to put a little bit of solder in there until we have a nice shiny silver solder ball. Look at that, nice and pretty. These will be trimmed off the same way. We're going to hold it with our fingers so it doesn't go flying off, and just trim it nice and tight. Same with over here. Hold it with our finger, trim it. There we go. There's nothing to catch. We can run our finger across there, nothing to catch on there. Alright, so now we need to do a function test to make sure that this is ready, this is going to work. So we're going to take our batteries, we're going to load them in the battery pack in the way that it's marked. And then we're going to line these up, and we should see all of our LEDs lighting up. If any of them don't, take a look, make sure that they're in the correct way and that all of the connections are good. Maybe touch them up, put a little bit of extra heat on them. But now that that has been verified, we need to take the batteries back out. You do not want to solder with power on, and batteries tend to respond very poorly to heat. There are only a couple of types of batteries that like being warm. Other batteries like to explode. Let's go back to, let's go to this view. So we're going to load this in like this, and then we're going to flip it around. You know, let's go close up again. There we go. See if we can get that in better focus. There we are. So these are going to be very similar to the others. We can't bend, well, we can bend these, but these are much thicker posts, so it's going to be much harder to. And some of our younger students probably can't. So we're just going to put that that tinning down like this. You can see how it forms that connection. We need that connection, and then we can, you know, count to 3, and then make sure everything's nice and warm. We add the solder from the other side. Come on, there we go. Let it heat all the way through. Look at that. That one fought us a little bit, but using the correct techniques, see, we got that stickiness there. Poof, just like that. It's super easy if you have the right technique. If you have the wrong technique, it can be super frustrating. So let's come back to this view. We're going to trim these on here. You definitely want to keep your finger on top because these will leave with some authority and blast across the room. There we go. I have been hit by them. And now, put the batteries back in. And look at that. It's working. So that is our introduction to through-hole soldering workshop. And I'm going to turn it over to questions. We've got about 15 minutes till our next session. So feel free to ask questions. We've got no questions in the YouTube, and we've got no questions in the hardware hacking village yet. So feel free. Now's an excellent time. If you're curious, the art behind me is a painting my mother did. I'm a big fan of cephalopods and octopus in general, so that's really cool. I'm using a Hako FX888D soldering iron. It is one of my favorites. That's not sponsored, but you know, hint, hint. But yeah, I love their stuff. I have a couple other soldering irons. This is still my favorite. It's the ones that we use in our workshops. We've drugged them across the country. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, perhaps thousands of students go through them, and they've not been destroyed. So that's a testament to their longevity, in my opinion. They're not cheap, but man, they last. They're about $100. You can get them for $80 on Amazon on sale sometimes. I want to thank our sponsor, Cyber City Circuits, again. Without them, we wouldn't be able to, you know, well, it would not be as easy to do all this stuff. So if you, they do have some really cool STEM kits and projects in their store. If you're interested in supporting them, that's one way you can do it. That said, the best way to support them is to steer business towards their PCB assembly. That's what they do for actual work. The rest of the stuff is just for, you know, like this workshop is for me. It's not something I'm doing for money. It's something I'm doing because I want more people to learn and have an opportunity to do fun stuff. So they have kind of a similar attitude with their subscription kit, subscription box service, and their various kits that they have. They sell some really cool products from some really cool designers, some of which I've been fortunate to meet. So there, if you like LED art and LED wearables, there's stuff that you can do, that you can buy through them to support both of them and other local artists, and really cool stuff. I want to thank all of our volunteers. We've got Mix Edna and Chris, Tech MN Girl. They have been doing a fantastic job at several of these with me, and that's it makes it so much easier not to have to be on stream for 6 hours straight, which is exhausting. Unfortunately, Mix Edna's got a headache, so I will be taking over her next workshop here in about 15 minutes. Still got a bunch of time to kill. I might put this on pause and come back and do that, because I actually need to prepare for that, because I don't have that slide deck ready, because normally I don't do that presentation. Oh, no, there, here. Still no questions. Alright, well, I'm going to I think I'm going to shut this down. I'll be back this afternoon for oscilloscopes, multimeters, measuring signals on a circuit or two. We'll try to decode some serial data. We will mess around with some other things, and then I will do some surface mount soldering for a little while. Show how that's different than this morning's workshop, and whatever else you all want to talk about. So if you have questions or stuff you want to see, if I have the stuff, I will throw it together and we'll put it around, and we'll mess around with it. So thank you very much for joining us. Remember, I love you and you're worth it, and to take care